You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture and all things related to it. New episodes are released daily. For more information, check out glossahouse.com and subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube. Welcome and enjoy.
Χαίρετε πάντες, εγώ είμαι η εσέ και τούτες την ζων හෙλληνιστί. Hello everyone, I'm Jesse Orloff and this is Living in Greek. Today I wanted to take some time to introduce and talk about the second major habit in my life for progressing and maintaining my Greek. In a prior episode, I talked about introducing habits in general and how important that is. And then I talked a little bit about the 7-minute-a-day reading habit that I use. Today I want to talk about building a vocabulary habit. Before I get into that, I want to share an idea that my Greek teacher, Tom Chittum, shared with me early on, and it's one that we continue to use and talk about a lot. Tom likened the process of learning a language to climbing a mountain. When you climb a mountain, to get to the top, if your goal is to get to the top, there are two metaphorical ways that you can approach the mountain. There is the north face and the south face. And what does that mean? When we say north face, we're talking about climbing the mountain in the difficult approaches, or the sheer cliff walls, the dangerous passes that you have to put a lot of focus and energy into just making it a few feet. And on the other hand, when we talk about the south pass or the south face, we're talking about those smooth, winding, comfortable paths that reveal to you the beauty of the mountain path that you're walking up, and that, you might not break as much of a sweat, but you might just simply enjoy being there. And when you're learning a language, a lot of the activities that you do and a lot of the approaches you take, you can categorize these as either north face or south face. So, for example, some of the north face approaches that we, for us, and this might vary depending on who you are, some of the north face approaches would be like the grammar translation method in general, paradigm memorization and drilling, and also, in this case, I think vocabulary memorization and drilling. On the other hand, the south face has seemed to me to be things more like reading, listening, singing in the language, ordering a meal if you happen to be using a living language like Spanish, discovering an insight in the language that you haven't had before. All of these things are the activities that I feel like in my own personal life have charged me up and have given me kind of the wind in my sails to keep on going. And so in the language learning process, you need both the north face and the south face, I think. And the reason is because, to extend our analogy about the mountain further, if you want to go very far up a mountain, the south face is only going to take you so far. And eventually you're going to get to a more challenging pass. And you might have to do some north face work just to be able even to walk on a more challenging south face pass. And so I believe that vocabulary is an essential, albeit north face activity, to help to make much more of the south face of learning a language accessible to us. So let me break that down into some more relevant statistics here. So comprehensible input is said to be achieved when you get to around the 98% mark in a passage or in a conversation so you can understand about 98% of it. That allows you to comprehend most of what's being said and allows you to learn naturally on top of that. Now, how do we get to that 98% mark? In a previous second language acquisition insights lesson by Dr. Jennifer Noonan, she talks about how when we're learning a language, students process words for meaning before they process it for form. So I believe that when you build a good vocabulary habit, and you're typically learning just one form of that word. You're learning, for nouns, you're learning the nominative singular. For verbs, you're learning the present active indicative. Adjectives, you're learning, the nominative with the endings often in all masculine, feminine, and neuter. And you're not learning all the forms there, but simply knowing that word represents this sense allows you, when you're listening or reading, to more easily pick up the context and the meaning of the passage that you're in. And so when you have a large enough vocabulary to allow you to kind of understand the general sense that each of these units in a sentence, or the words in the sentence, could represent, it allows your natural language processing faculties to start piecing together the overall meaning of a sentence, and allows your natural language faculties to start intuitively learning form in these sentences. And so the more vocabulary you have, the easier I think it will be to continue to learn the language and to advance in the language. All right, so in the New Testament, or in the Koine Greek, we have the New Testament, we have the Septuagint, and there's other literature as well that we can use to be the things that we're wanting to learn. However, most of us are usually starting with the New Testament, and maybe the New Testament is the only goal you have. So how can we learn, or what are the vocabulary targets in the New Testament? Well, there's about 5,400 words in the New Testament. And thankfully, you don't have to learn all 5,400. You don't have to learn all 5,400 words in order to have fluency in reading the New Testament. Really, with about the first 300 words, you can get to about 80% of the overall words in the New Testament. So that's every word that occurs about 50 times or more. If you add another 350 words to that, that's going to put you at around 87% of the word occurrences in the New Testament. And that's going to be about a frequency of 20 or more. By 1,000 words, you are now at 92% of the words in the New Testament, and that's a frequency of about 10 or higher. So that's every word that occurs 10 times or higher. Once you get to around 1,500 words, now you're at 95% of the words that occur in the New Testament, and that's around a frequency of about 6 or higher. And then around 2,500 words, that's less than half of all the words in the New Testament. You're at that 98% mark, which is what, that 98%, which we said is where you will have comprehensible input. That being said, most of us who are learning Greek, we already have some or a lot of familiarity with the New Testament and the stories that appear in the New Testament. So I think that we actually get to a level of comprehensible input in the New Testament probably before we get to that 98% mark, just because of our natural familiarity with the books and the language in the New Testament. I don't know that scientifically that would be considered comprehensible input, but I found in my own personal life that I have still been able to really get a lot out of passages well before I've been at that 98% level, and I feel like I've still been able to learn a lot there. What I noticed as I have been progressing my vocabulary, so let me tell you where I'm at right now as of writing this. So I am at about 4,800 words in my kind of internal lexicon, and I should be able to kind of finish out the New Testament within the next 3 months or so at the rate that I'm going. But I feel that I can read the New Testament fluently now. I feel like I've been able to read much of the New Testament fluently for quite a while, and what I will say is, at each of those levels that I mentioned there, and really, the levels are just kind of abstractions that I've used to help to kind of point to where you're hitting what percentages and at what frequency you can get there. But every few months, as you're consistently learning vocabulary, I found that my comprehension kind of ratcheted up a new level. You don't notice it day to day. You often don't notice it week to week, but month to month, you start to see the impact that learning vocabulary has on you. And so, I've hoped in this video, in this session, to kind of demonstrate what a vocabulary habit can get you. But how do you actually go about building a vocabulary habit? How do you learn so many words? If you've taken Greek 1, or your first morphology classes, or you've probably covered the first 350 words or so. If you've pushed into second year Greek classes, that maybe got you down to 25, to a frequency of 25, maybe a frequency of 15 if you pushed really hard. And in those classes, not knowing how to learn vocabulary, many of us just kind of default to manual approaches like I would make vocab lists. I'd write them down, and then I would kind of read over those lists. But I found apps. A good app that I use, one app that was really helpful for me early on, was an app called Parse Greek, and that allowed me and it actually synced up with the grammar I was using, Basics of Biblical Greek, and allowed me to kind of drill the words in every chapter, and that was really helpful. But what I found was that somewhere between 500 and 1,000 words, the volume of words became too difficult for me to manage manually, and I needed a system. I had been hearing around that time about spaced repetition, and so what I would say is that the best system for learning and maintaining vocabulary is a spaced repetition system. I'm not going to talk about that in this episode, but in the next episode, I'm going to get into a specific spaced repetition in general, and then I'll start to talk about Anki, which is the spaced repetition tool that I have used for several years now to continue to push and advance my vocabulary. So I hope that after today, I might have maybe convinced you or given you a little bit of an urge to start pushing and working on a stronger vocabulary habit. And I hope in subsequent episodes here to start giving you specific tools and knowledge that will help you to do that in a maintainable and consistent way. So thank you. I'll see you next time.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.